next-generation 911 systems. It includes real experiences from leaders utilizing these processes throughout the country. Today's session will feature presenters from iCert and the Charleston County Consolidated 911 Center. Jeff Robertson, Senior Vice President, General Manager for Public Safety at Rapid SOS, and John Snap, Vice President of Technology, Carrier Service, West Safety, will be representing iCert and will discuss a new resource available through the National 911 Program, recommended best practices for supplemental 911 location data. Jim Lake, Director of the South Carolina Charleston County Consolidated 911 Center, will share his experience using this supplemental data. For more information on National 911 Program webinars or to access archived recordings or learn more about the National 911 Program, please visit 911.gov. Feedback or questions can be sent to National 911 Team at mcp911.com. If you're experiencing difficulty with the WebEx application, please call WebEx Technical Assistance at 1-866-229-3239 and select option 1. Please note that all participants' phone lines have been put in a listen-only mode, and this webinar is being recorded. To ask your questions of our presenters, feel free to take one of two actions. The first, using WebEx chat feature located on the right-hand side of your screen. Enter your question at any time during the presentation, and it will be entered into the queue. This feature is not visible while your screen is in the expanded page view. Or to ask your question live, use the raise hand feature to request your phone line be unmuted, and you will be called upon to ask your question. Individuals registered for this webinar will receive access to today's PowerPoint presentation and the webinar recording. And with that, I'd like to introduce Ms. Laurie Flaherty, Coordinator for the National 911 Program. Laurie, please go ahead.
Thanks, Jackie. It is my pleasure to introduce our speakers for today. We're really lucky to have them to talk about the best practices document. We have two people who were one of the many authors of that document. Mr. Jeff Robertson is the Senior VP and General Manager for Public Safety with Rapid SOS. And John Snap is the Vice President of Technology Carrier Services for West Safety. They are both representing iCert, which is the Industry Council for Emergency Response Technologies. That is a trade association that represents public safety and emergency response technology providers. They were one of the three entities that were the chief authors of the best practices document. The other two organizations were the National Association of State 911 Administrators, or NASNA, and the National Emergency Number Association, or NENA. With that, I will turn over the floor to Jeff and John. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Laurie. This is John. So Jeff and I are going to kind of go back and forth on some of the slides here. We've got about 20 minutes of slides, and then we'll take the questions at the end of that. So sort of start off with, on behalf of iCert, the Board of Directors and Executive Director Kim Scoville, we'd like to thank NENA, NASNA, and the National 911 Office for this opportunity to discuss supplemental location data best practices. If you'll go ahead and move on to the next slide. So many of the iCert members who offer this technology were part of the working group that developed the best practices paper. Thanks to them and their efforts, and we encourage you to review the paper as part of your exploration of this topic. We're not going to go into, we're not going to basically reread the paper here. We'll give you a little of the supplements and the highlights of it and where things are kind of moving beyond that. You're welcome to contact iCert at the Executive Director email for a copy of the slides and or the paper. And we have the email right here on the slide. We hope that you learn more about ICERT and our members at the ICERT website and via Twitter. Commercial public safety providers attending today are also eligible for the free ICERT newsletter. Just send an email to the executive director email address. Okay, we can go ahead to the next slide. And we can go ahead and move on to the next slide. So the important thing about the paper is really defining what supplemental 911 location data is. And this is sort of a critical aspect to really understand the differences in what it is and how it's can be used. And this is kind of the fundamental of everything behind the best practices document. And what it really is it's any location data associated with a 911 call that is provided to a PSAP without the involvement of the originating carrier. It doesn't necessarily define what kind of location it is and how that location was determined, but it's really how it's being transmitted and what it's being with. Many times the location, the initial source of the location, whether it may be DBH or device-based hybrid, or how that location may be done, may be the same source that's being used by the originating carrier, or it could be the supplemental. It's really how it's transmitted to the PSAP, who is transmitting it, and how it's being received at the PSAP and how it's being utilized. With the examples of like Google ELS, it could come through the carrier, it could come through the supplemental location provider, or it can come through both. The locations that are coming through the originating carrier, through them, it's using the existing mechanisms that may be out there. It may be using ALI for legacy type networks on providing that supplemental location, and in the we're providing that location. In this case, it would be considered a primary location. The carriers will be using whatever location sources they have. It could be like the Google ELS that we see with like T-Mobile that's deploying it today. They also may be utilizing the existing control plane locations that they're utilizing to talk to the phone, and they may be using other network-based technologies such as the cell ID location or OTDOA or other location technologies. And those carriers then pick the best location and pass it through the existing mechanisms through ALI for a legacy network, or through on an I3 network through what they call the LRF, or using a protocol called HELD to deliver that location down to the PSAP. And that will come across as primary, as very much as you see today with the ALI databases that are coming through, or in an I3 mode, that information that comes on the screen, which is actually a combination of using HELD protocol to provide the location, and then what they call ADR, which we'll talk a little bit more later, which gives the additional information on that call, such as the carrier name and the customer name and other non-location elements. So that's one path that the location come through, and then supplemental is the secondary path that that information can come through, with this case location data. It may be using the same source, but it's not utilizing the carrier's network, it's not utilizing the ALI network, and it may or may not be utilizing the ESI network to deliver it down to the PSAP. But it's coming into the PSAP outside of the carrier's protocol, so outside of that LIS or the HELD interface. And it's coming into the PSAP, so it doesn't, the pieces of it is it doesn't rely on that other network to get the data there. It's a separate path coming in. The supplemental location, there's many different types of locations that may be, and different providers that may be doing it. And they're on being able to put it in there. As we know, Jeff will be on here talking about it from Rapid SOS, and there's many other ICERT members out there that are also provide different types of supplemental location data that could come into the PSAP. Next slide, please, and I'll pass it now over to Jeff.
Great, thanks, thanks, John. I think when you read the white paper on this topic, I think one of the things that we wanted to be clear when we authored it and we had great debate on was the supplemental location in the PSAP was not intended to replace that carrier location you're getting that John mentioned through your traditional ALI. It's meant to supplement that location and to try to provide, either additional data to improve the emergency response, but it does require that people, you say, hey, listen, you we don't want to see just you have to pick one or the other. This was more of a supplement to the location you'd be getting through the carrier. So in many cases, what you'll find with the supplemental location, however, is it may come before the call because it may be available in some cases before it even rings, because the handset itself, the minute someone dials 911 and hits send, it starts that path to populate to that supplemental location provider. Sometimes that's a lot faster than by going through the selective routing network and getting to the PSAP. So we have seen a number of cases where the DBH, the handset location, is actually before the call even is answered at the PSAP. So, which has been, I think, one of the benefits we've seen for folks that have implemented it. It can be integrated. Many people think, well, how do I get this location? So I can speak to RapidSOS, but again, there's other, like John mentioned, other providers. But we work with over 60 different 911 and CAD providers that have integrated to RapidSOS and can query our clearinghouse, so it can work with your existing systems you have today. We also, in many of the providers, have maybe an over-the-top or a secure VPN web-based portal where you can query and get that location as well through that. So there's a mix. It depends on which PSAP would use which solution, and sometimes they'll use both, depending on their practices at that PSAP. But each PSAP we've learned, we've now engaged with, we're just around 3,900 different PSAPs in the United States. But each should, and we encourage folks to consider a policy on how to handle this. I can give you just one story as an example. So we had a case where a caller had called in inside sort of a metal grocery store building. So their location was a pretty big phase 1 location circle on the map of where this caller was calling from, and they had just had a cardiac incident, and but the person was conscious and was laying down, but was able to call 911. So they swore to the call taker that, hey, I'm at Fresh Market. I'm at Fresh Market, and please send somebody quick. I'm having trouble breathing. And when we got the phase 1 location, it covered a pretty broad area, which could have been Fresh Market. When we got the DBH location from the handset he was calling from, was clearly showing within that circle that he was at Whole Foods, which was about a little over half a mile down the same street. And the call taker did a great job saying, sir, your location, but obviously he's panicked and said, no, I'm at Fresh Market. So they were smart enough in their policy. They rolled 2 EMS units, and then eventually the gentleman was pretty agitated, but they actually found him in Whole Foods where the DBH location had confirmed his location. So just in that, and that's not every call. This is just one outside incident, but I wanted to let people know that you need to have a policy of how you're going to handle that. Should they be different, or should the handset be different? In that case, the dispatcher said, hey, listen, I'm going to send, and had 2 units available to send in that case. So you should have a policy for each PSAP of how to handle this. So next slide, please, Jackie, if you could. This is just one generic example of, this is a customer screen, a user of ours at RapidSOS. This is their tool that they use in their PSAP. And what you'll see is a phase, almost like a phase, it can be a phase 2 circle in some cases, depending on the location, or it could be a phase 1 location. But this is what the circle you'll see sort of on, hopefully on everybody's screen, it looks a little orange. It's saying, here's where the caller is, and there's the central, where the phone number is the center of that circle. The red dot in their system shows where the handset is saying it is located, the supplemental location is located. So in this case, it's within the circle, sort of verifies, hey, chances are it's, helps verify it. And it's showing it's on that Woods of River Chase Road. In many cases, we found 911, and I was, in the sheriff's deputy for many years, we'd be sent maybe down that one-way road where the green dot is. And for me to not find anybody and then have to back up and go down and around once we got a proper location or other people called, it could take significant time. So this is what a lot of the use, and I know Jim Lake from Charleston will talk a bit about how they use it in their center in real life. But this is just an example. I want to show people how it comes up on the screen. Some people have said it's a bit confusing to get to locations. We've surveyed a ton of call takers and dispatchers. And what we found is if it's presented in this method, they can do a good job dispatching emergency personnel. But some people were concerned if you gave them sort of 2 locations. But this is sort of 2 locations, they're supporting each other in a supplemental one. So Jackie, if you can go to the next slide. Happy to answer questions later on this kind of stuff too, guys. Wanted to talk a bit about the future of supplemental data. We've talked about supplemental location, but we do see a movement where we can now supply call takers and dispatchers more information. Let me just give you an example, or maybe a couple of examples we're seeing at Rapid SOS is one of the things I've been promoting is to try to pass the, again, this is future, so I don't want anybody to think we're doing this today, but we, I'm working very hard to do it, is I'd love to display along with the call the default language of the device. So I was at a PSAP tour in a very multicultural large city, and they gave me the example. They had a Thai speaking caller, and obviously when they're in a panic they may speak a little English, but most people go back to their native language in an emergency. And was answered at the 911 center, said, oh, this is a non-English speaker, thought it was Chinese, and then started the process to get a Chinese translator on the line. That took 5 to 7 minutes. The translator came on, quickly determined, hey, this isn't Chinese, this is Thai. And then had to have another translator come on. A lot of time was lost in that. The device that they were calling from, the handset, was set up for Thai. Like that user, obviously when they set up their phone. I would love to pass that. This is a supplemental data element we've never had in 911 before, but I would love to pass that to the dispatcher. And you'd have to have a policy of how you're going to handle that. But it would say, hey, if their phone's set up for Thai, chances are, the Thai translator, or if you had a Thai-speaking operator or a telecommunicator available, you could pass it to them. So that's just one example of what we're seeing for supplemental data coming. But there is a lot of things around alarms, telematics, and other things that having this separate path to the PSAP will allow us to pass more data. We've been limited in the, historically in 911 to the 512, K alley screen, and I think that now that we can have other methods to pass data, it'll help us in doing those. So that's just one example. I can give you probably 10 more, but we're happy to talk through those later on if there's any questions. There has been a lot of concern around PSAPs to say, hey, I don't want my telecommunicators and dispatchers overwhelmed with all this data, video of, of an accident scene and other things. So I think and I agree, there are many cases there is supplemental data that is not of value to the telecommunicator or dispatcher. The mission there is to find what the problem is, where they are, and get help there. So if you can go to the next slide, Jackie, I'll try to talk about how we look at supplemental data by role. And I'll try to give you, again, this is a bit of a busy diagram, but you can see on the left is sort of where supplemental data could come from. So wearables, everybody who's got smartwatches these days, those things have a lot of, in many cases, valuable data in emergency response. Connected homes, smart cities with the gunshot detection and cameras and a bunch of other things that are now in smartphone apps and connected cars. We're talking to many of these providers. But I'll give you an example of, let me pick one. Let me give you let's say one of these fancy doorbells. You see, I won't name any brands, but if you have a camera at your doorbell and you see motion, and your app comes up on your phone and says, hey, there's somebody on your porch and they're, they look like they're taking your Amazon package. So you determine, hey, I'm not home, but I need law enforcement to go to my house. I don't like what's happening on my porch. So in that case, you could dial 911 from that app. The video, again, I'm giving you this as just a high-level overview. There's a little more, obviously, technical detail to it. The video can be streamed to a ADR clearinghouse like Rapid SOS, but there could be others. The call comes in, the 911 center normally speak to the 911 telecommunicator, say, hey, there's somebody on my porch, this is my home address, The dispatcher will see there's additional, they'll have a little dot that just says there's additional data available. It may not be permanent, they will dispatch a unit to that, and I've been to these type of calls before in homes or home alarms, whereas when I show up, maybe the person's gone, the package is gone, everything else. But in my CAD, I may know, hey, there's additional data. There's the video. So it maybe wasn't pertinent in the role of a call taker or dispatcher, but it may be very pertinent after the fact for the investigation to have that video as part of my record of the incident. And that's where the sort of, when you see on the right here, the different uses by incident management or dispatch, by command or situational awareness, or records, evidence, and investigations. Different roles could use different data, and we talk about wearables and some of the medical data that's in the devices you wear and carry. Again, some of that may be confidential, some of it may not be even valuable to law enforcement, for instance. It may be very important to the EMS responder to know what's going on. And we can assign those roles would only see specific data. They may not necessarily be ingested for everyone. So the goal of that, and this is still early days, is to not overwhelm a call taker or dispatcher with every form of data available. I may say, hey, there's extra data, but you may not need it to get emergency personnel there. You may not need that live video of an accident scene. That may not be pertinent to what you need to do, or maybe it is, but you can access it, but it's not going to be pushed to the screen to add extra stress and workload to those call takers and dispatchers. And I've been in law enforcement for a number of years. We're pretty passionate about that at my company and at ICERT about trying to say, hey, listen, there's enough going on in the dispatch center now that we don't want to overwhelm them. But there is valuable data that can be used to improve the emergency response depending on the role. So happy to answer more questions about that as well. Jackie, so that's next slide. I think we're getting close to the end here. And I think, John, I think you were going to go over some of these standards in place, and I'll hand it off to you. Jeff.
Yep. So this is kind of following on with how the supplemental data really fit into to the standards on what's being done. So today we see that we have ALI. And really what ALI is made up of is it's made up of location data, and it's made up of a little bit of supplemental data. It's made up of class of service, possibly a caller's name, the carrier name, and a few other little pieces of information. But as Jeff was sort of saying, it's very limited on its size. As we move to I3, ALI is replaced by two elements that provide that data, that give that ALI equivalency basically to start with. And if any of the PSAPs that are out there now that have already deployed I3, they're probably already doing this. And so first of all, they're providing the ALI over this other mechanism. And so they provide the location data over this held interface, and they provide the additional data that's there over what they call ADR, this ADR interface. And that is provided down with the call, the link to where this is, and it goes off. And today, that's simply being used to provide the carrier name, the class of service, and a few other types of fields. But then as PSAPs deploy next-gen 911 or deploy I3, the ability is that all of this supplemental data and even the clearinghouse like Rapid SOS is doing or other providers are doing, this using the standard I3 interface now can query for this additional data. It may be, in this case, it may be additional data about the caller. And you can provide the location, the supplemental location that may be coming in from possibly multiple providers. It could even be the buildings themselves are providing more information about the location or other types of location that may be coming in with it. There may be additional information coming in about the caller, very much as Jeff talked about. It's like, what is his native language? How can it be done? Or it could be the location. There may be additional data about the location itself, such as building blueprints or other information that may be relevant for those different roles of the different call takers may have. And this is all really defined as part of the I3 standards. And so that means it's a real important thing that it follows and comes in the standards. So there can be implementations by many providers out there that may want to provide this additional data. As it works in standards, what happens is there's the ability for the link for this additional data repository that may be out there to be passed along with the 911 call, the SIP invite, down to the PSAP, and then that can be queried for. So there may be stuff that we know specifically for that call. That's very much like the location of it or information about the caller. But also the systems themselves could query, say, do you have more, now that I know the location, do you have additional data about this location? Or now I know the caller, do you have additional data about the caller? Or and so on. And that's the standards really allow that, and we see many of the providers out there are starting to do that. today's ALI is very limited. I mean, very much as Jeff was saying, it's limited to a very few number of characters. So it can't support all the additional data. It's fine for passing the location as we see it today. Passing a primary location, it can do it just fine, but supplemental location, it can't. I3 supports that very well as we're doing it. I think now we'll sort of pass it on, and we'll see if there's any questions that we have from the group. So I'll pass this back to the group.
So thank you, Mr. Robertson and Mr. Snap. We'll start with the Q&A portion of our session. And as a reminder, if you're going to ask a question, please use the WebEx chat feature located on the right-hand side of your screen, or press the raise hand button so we can unmute your phone line. Thank you.
Our first question that we have today is referring back to the example you gave with the Thai caller and the Thai phone. The question is that something the phone service sets up, or is there some language service that does that type of translation?
Great question on the language. So that is the setting on the mobile phone itself. When you set up your smartphone, when you first get it, you can say, hey, what language would you like it in? So it's typically done from the handset itself. So that comes right to us as an ADR element that we'd pass to the 911 center. So it's usually right from the user and caller themselves would set that up on their phone, the language.
And a follow-up to that, can the ANI be set up to show that quote-unquote Thai phone?
I can't speak to that today. Obviously, there's some limits to the characters of what can be passed. I think it may be able to do that. I just know it's those are pretty strict standards of what can go into which fields. So adding a new element might be tough, and this is sort of why we talk about additional data to try to have a method to deliver information sort of outside of the ALI. But I don't know, John, if you wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think in general the ALI is not designed for doing that. And really, as we look forward to additional types of supplemental location and fields are coming in, that's really why we want to see us people moving to I3. That's where those types of services are set up and where it will be work. I mean, we could always change ALI to make it do anything it wants to be done, but it doesn't seem to be the best use of resources out there in the public safety industry, in my opinion.
Thank you both. Our next question is asking, who is considered the owner of the data along the various pathways it travels? And is it stored anywhere along the pathways or only at destination?
This is a great question that we had asked and been debated in ADR circles. Obviously, it comes into the mode of privacy. So I can talk about, again, this is Jeff, and I'll let John certainly comment as well. When we get ADR location, our supplemental location from our handset partners, that is only during a 911 call. And that is after the call is done, it's available for a short period after, and then it's not available. So that is not stored. And it's encrypted to the endpoint, so to the actual call taker or dispatcher. So that information is not stored in any method. Now, other data elements, every company that supplies data into a supplemental data provider or ADR server may have different data rights and things. So what we try to do, or at least our policy is, I don't know if there's a standard yet in the industry, but our policy is we pass that through to the PSAP, and then they can store it in whatever function they want. We have to adhere to the standards and the privacy of the people supplying the data. So I know it's a long-winded answer, but the basic thing is that the emergency responder can store it and keep it in their systems. Maybe they want to have it in the incident record in the CAD or in their record system or in their 911 CPE. But in our cases, it depends on who's supplying the data and those rules around privacy. And because some users may opt out, some handset people may say, you know what, I don't want to pass this, and that's fine. But if they do opt in, there may be some privacy regulations that say, hey, this is what's going to happen. If you opt in, here's the deal. It'll get past emergency responders, and then it's deleted. But it could be different from who supplies the data. John, I don't know if you've...
Yep, and I agree with that. I mean, we look at it's really the source of the data is typically owned by who's providing it at the beginning. If we look at traditional alley type of data, you've got the originating carriers that are putting some information in there, and they're really kind of owning that and provide it through. As it moves to supplemental, that model kind of stays the same. The originator is keeping it. That's where it's being stored. The elements along the way are passing it. So wherever that really additional data repository is, if it's storing the data locally, that's become the sources of it or the owners of it, and they're passing it through. That's kind of where it's being done. The network along the way doesn't store it. The endpoint, when it gets to the PSAP, very much like if you think of Alley today, the data is being delivered, and then in your call records, you're storing that same information, or it's being stored into CAD. Expect to sort of see it the same type way. There's different privacy agreements and data use agreements for each of the sources that come along with it. And of course, I mean, when you're doing this across an ESI net, there's a lot of advantages that you're running it across a secured network. And of course, and even on top of the secured network, you're running it with security, encryption, certificates and such that go across that to maintain that the data is kept private while it's in transit. And then, of course, while it's at rest at the source providers, those are typically always encrypted and stored that way where that data is stored for privacy at rest.
Thank you. When is this available to supplement the 911 system?
Well, I mean, it's available today. So, for instance, again, I can speak to Rapid SOS, but so we offer many different forms of supplemental location today, as I mentioned, about 3,900 different PSAPs here in the U.S. We do offer from some of our other partners. So Uber is a partner of ours that provides supplemental data during an emergency call. We will pass sort of the car they're in, the license plate, the color, where they're, who the rider is, and possibly driver, and then in the future, sort of where you were picked up and where you're headed kind of thing. So that's a supplemental data element. We also just recently announced with the American Heart Association some profile data, as well as Medical Alert. For those of you who know Medical Alert, and another company called 911 Secure that works with Avaya for in-building systems to pass sort of where those phones are. So it's we are doing it today. There are many forms of supplemental data that we supply to those PSAPs using or have access to our clearinghouse and today. So it's to answer the question, it's available today.
And I know there's a lot of solutions that are being done out there for doing it. I know there's a lot that you see today being deployed that are somewhat proprietary solutions being done, which is always a good way of getting it out there before the standards are fully done. And so we see a lot of those being deployed. We see the beginnings of the I3 standard of it being done is where I was talking about early as replacement of Alley in supplemental location where those. So now you've got sort of the protocols and the hooks in there into the call handling systems and even the beginning of the CAD systems to pass that data. I think there's still work to be done on as we see more and more of the I3. I mean, the standards deployments will always take a little longer to get out there, but as the markets are deploying I3, we're seeing those today are utilizing ADR. And I think as we see the more data sources, you'll see that expand, and you'll see, I think, a lot of the proprietary solutions sort of roll in to the standard solution, so it becomes a method that a lot of the PSAPs can deploy a sort of a combined solution.
So thank you for the great question. Laurie, I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to you to introduce our next speaker.
Thanks, Jackie. Our next speaker is Mr. Jim Lake, whose day job is as the director of Charleston County, South Carolina's Consolidated 911 Center. Jim, frankly, was in the back of the room when a demonstration occurred with regard to supplemental location data, and the best practices document, frankly, was his brainchild. He offered the National 911 Program the chance to be the convener for the groups that offered to work on the document, and being the kind of guy he is, he not only talks the talk, but he walks the walk. So Jim's going to share with us Charleston's experience in terms of using supplemental location data. Jim, go ahead.
Laurie, you're way too kind, and thank you for the opportunity to present today. And thank you to our attendees for being here. So Charleston County is using the Rapid SOS Clearinghouse to receive our supplemental location information. We originally received it in December of 2017. That's when we started. And it came through our RAVE Smart 911 application. The benefits to us at that point were that RAVE was offering it for free, and so was Smart, so it didn't cost us anything. It was already in an existing tool. I would encourage you to look into this more if you're not using the Rapid SOS or any other ADR option. So we also have it running in our Central Square TriTech CAD as well. So there are two separate paths, two separate tools that collect that information. As those of you that are in the PSAP world know, we strive for redundancy and diversity, and so if I have an option to get it in two different ways, I'm going to do that every time. Next slide, Jackie. This is a Smart 911 screenshot, and in the right-hand box, you can see that's where we're receiving our supplemental location information. What I want to point out with the group is that with Smart 911, you don't have to have a Smart profile to receive the supplemental location information. It just runs it through that path, through the clearinghouse and back. If there is additional information, if the user has a Smart profile, then you will get that as well. Next slide, please. This is a TriTech CAD screenshot. It's similar to what Jeff showed you earlier as far as the look of it. So with TriTech CAD, we are still receiving our carrier location information, but we're also getting the supplemental location information, and you can see those 2 points on that screenshot. We do still use the carrier information as our primary, but we're finding more and more often that the supplemental location information may be more accurate. And I say maybe for now, and I'll explain that as we move on a little bit. We do also, so we're not having confusion amongst our telecommunicators. I know that was mentioned earlier, that was a concern on some people's part about having two different locations. We have not found that to be true. It's color-coded, it's pointed out, they train with it, they use it every day, they understand the differences. In our CAD system, if that Rapid SOS location is within our preset CAD snap tolerance, it will automatically geo-validate to an address point or a block range. And I'll show you how that paid off for us here in just a little bit. Next slide. So our everyday use, I'd love to tell you we save a life every day with it, but that's not the case. But it does have everyday use that is beneficial and important to us. First of all is our abandoned 911 calls and our hang-up calls. Our police officers and deputies are actually responding to these because we have a more accurate location. And in many cases, they're actually locating that caller and educating them as to the abandoned call or hang-up or butt dial, as it's commonly referred to in the business. So that's been a benefit to us as well. We're also finding that our hang-up calls, because we have a more accurate location through the supplemental location information tool, that we're also finding they're not in our area of responsibility. So in some cases, we're finding that they're at the Citadel campus, which is the Citadel Police, or it's at our Medical University of South Carolina. And again, that makes it their call. So we're able to pass that information off to them, and they generally follow up with that. So that's more workload off of us so that we can close those out. Next, please. In the past few months, we've had some recent success regarding domestic violence situations. I've written this out, but just as you can all read, I'm just going to tell you it's the typical call. A 911 open line, you hear some voices in the background, and there's a hang-up or an open line and a disturbance, but no location, no solid location from the carrier. We were finding that with the supplemental location information, we're able to get a more accurate location, and we're getting responders to those houses. So previously I said we're not saving a life every day. You know, this may debunk that, in that we're getting there now where we did not get there before. We couldn't find those callers before, and we're stopping those situations. So again, as you can see, they call open line, or someone walked into a house and said, you know, the subject was their child's father. He doesn't live there, and the line disconnects. And then finally, upon answering, the call taker noted there was some arguing in the background. We called back, another hang up, and we had locations on those. So those are true successes, and those are true everyday uses. We see those type of calls all the time. Next slide, please. So we were talking about the snap tolerance earlier. Just last month we had a 911 call, and the caller was on his boat in the creek, was fishing and having a good time when he happened to notice a house on fire. He had a general idea what street he was looking at, but he certainly was on his boat and could not give us an accurate location or a house number. You can see the differences between the two. The Rapid SOS supplemental location information actually snapped to the house that was on fire at 7453 Pines Road. So there are some great use cases, some great examples of what we've actually seen occur, where when it's combined with a good GIS system and in the right tool, you can get an accurate address, and of course it clearly points that out for the call takers and dispatchers. And certainly, as Jeff alluded to earlier, we're trying to lessen their workload, not increase it. Next, please. So this summer, we're really looking forward to the possibilities it provides to us because of our waterways. As you can see from the map, all that blue, that dark blue, is Charleston County waterways that we're responsible for. We work very closely with the Coast Guard and the Harbor Patrol. But during a Charleston County season, what we usually find is that the nieces, the nephews, the sons, the daughters all show up at mom and dad's, uncle and aunt's house. They take the boat out, and they have no idea where they are, and they run aground somewhere, or they hit one of our sandbars, and they're calling for help without much idea of where they are. So in the past, we have certainly relied on the carrier information, which we still rely on, but the supplemental location information is going to provide us a much more accurate location that we can get help to. So I'd like to give you an example of the summer of 2017. We actually had a family of 4 run aground on the weekend, and when they ran the boat aground, mom fell off and became entangled in the propeller. Dad jumped in the water to keep her afloat until help could arrive, while the daughter called 911. We spent 30 minutes on the phone with that young lady trying to find where she was, and all the time Dad holding mom up trying to keep her from drowning while she's bleeding. So especially for those of you on the job, you can understand what could we have done with 20 minutes of those 30 minutes. If we had had a better location, would it have made a difference in that family's life? So we're excited to have it in place and especially use it on our waterways this summer. Next slide, please. We also have the PGA Tour coming to our area in 2020, and that'll be out on Kiowa Island, which is depicted by that lovely stretch of beach and green. If you look at the lower left-hand corner, you can actually see the Ocean Edge Golf Course. That's where they'll be playing. Well, we've actually mapped out the entire golf course, the tees and the holes. And basically what that does for us is it gives us that snap tolerance. If someone calls in from anywhere on the course, it will actually snap to that closest hole or tee, so we actually have a better location of where they're located, of where they will be. So certainly with the PGA coming in 2020, that's important to us, but we are using that currently, and it's worked for us a few times. It's amazing how many people will go out onto the golf course to play a relaxing round of golf and then have a heart attack. A couple more things. We're using the Uber feature, as Jeff mentioned. We have not had any real calls with that. We've done some testing with that. We're also looking forward to medical devices. Jeff had mentioned that the future really is all of those other devices that can give us locations to bring that supplemental information. So what we are currently working on our end is trying to bring the internal cardiac defibrillator people to the table. So if you can imagine the ICDs, the internal cardiac defibrillators, if it fires in someone's chest, it also will send an email. Well, if it can send an email, that tells me it can send an alert to 911 that that device has fired. So we're looking forward to working with Rapid SOS and the cardiac defibrillator makers or the ICD makers to get that moving forward as well. Something I wanted to mention, Jeff brought it up, was on his chart. I think he called them information specialists. We have been approved for and will be implementing this year communications specialists, because we believe all of this supplemental information that is going to be available to us cannot be processed fully by a call taker or a dispatcher because of time or training. So we're actually looking at creating specialized positions in the center that will actually, their job will be nothing else but to sift through that data and provide information to the field responders and give them a better response time, but also a better response package to go to that call. Next slide, please. So in 2016, we conducted a wireless accuracy testing for our county, and we did that to create a baseline to identify what our accuracy rates were based at that time. So we did 50 points throughout the county, and you can see some of them along the water's edge to help us out as well. And it gave us the baseline accuracy for 2016. Well, in 2020, we are going to revisit that and retest to determine whether or not the carriers have improved their accuracy. But we will also do a side-by-side comparison with the Rapid SOS clearinghouse tool to determine if there is a difference in the accuracy between the clearinghouse and the carriers. One of the things that we look forward to is data. I don't want to feel something's working better. I want to be able to prove it or disprove it, and the only way to do that is to go out there and collect the data to do that. Next slide. There's my contact information. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or if I can do anything for you. And obviously, I'll take any questions from the group.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. We'll start the next Q&A portion of our session. And as a reminder, to ask a question, please use the WebEx chat feature located on the right-hand side of your screen, or press the raise hand button so we can unmute your phone line. Thank you.
Our first question for you, Jim, is referring back to when you referred to the golf course. Is there an address point for each individual hole on the course?
An address point for the individual hole and for the tee as well.
Perfect, thank you. You spoke about having specialists starting with your agency. And has there been any progress in regards to supplemental information that you would be receiving and the ability to use that in legal cases?
I'm not sure the reference to legal cases, so I'll give you probably more than you're asking for. So we have created the job description. We'll be doing the hiring for those positions. And what we're looking to do with that specialist is to use the supplemental and crowdsourced information as well to be more proactive in the way we respond. So as an example, with Waze traffic, identifying a traffic accident before it's called in and sending response to that.
Thank you very much. We do have a few other questions that came in as Jim was presenting for both John and Jeff. If you would like to answer these questions, I'll go ahead and read them out for you. How long is data stored after an E911 is placed?
I can take a stab at that. How long is the 911 location data stored after the call is placed? So it can vary depending on the handset provider, but it can be anywhere from, it can be anywhere from 8 to 15 minutes before it's deleted, but it can vary sort of in those ranges is what we've seen.
And I would say, I mean, if we look at sort of beyond the supplemental location of the primary location, the storage mechanisms are all based upon state law and contracts there may be on how long it may be staying, how long it's stored at both the, sometimes you may have call detail records along within the network, and you have, but the main place it would be stored would be at the CAD side or the CPE side based upon data retention policies.
And John brings up a good point, is on our servers it's stored for that long, but in most cases, people who partner with a CAD or a 911 CP, they can store that based on those policies like John mentioned.
One of the participants on the call today is currently using Rapid SOS via their webpage. If they would be interested in integrating it with their system, their phone system they are currently using is Vista. How hard is it to do that, and how long does it take?
Great question. So Vesta is, I think, the solution that they mentioned they're using from Motorola. So they're one of our partners. So you just talk to your provider, and you may be already on the version that supports it, and you just have to talk to them of what would be involved to activate it in the Vesta system. And it can depend on which version you're on, but your Vesta Motorola representative can definitely help you out on that front. And we have a number of those integrations today.
Thank you. And we have one final question for today. The supplemental data, will the data work with other CAD systems, or are there any limitations? And if so, can they use it without CAD?
So a couple of things. So yes, you can use, we have what we call the Rapid SOS portal, which is a web tool, so you can access any of the supplemental data that's provided through that tool, which does not require a CAD. But most people, if you have a CAD, a lot of people like to store that information in the incident record, but certainly does not require that you have it on a CAD. And we have a number of users that access it directly through the Rapid SOS portal rather than through the CAD if they don't have one. So yes, it will work, to answer the question.
And I'll sort of say that's also an advantage of where the standards come in, is it creates a standard mechanism that allows many providers to provide an interface. So the CAD companies can provide the interface into supplemental data. CP providers can provide in supplemental data. And then it even allows, if you don't have the CAD or the CP, other providers, anybody out there, to provide the sort of the glass on the screen to access that standard protocol to get the data that's out there. So you're not locked into one way or another with that.
Well, I'd like to thank our speakers again today for their great insight, as well as to all the participants who provided some great questions. And before I turn it over to Laurie for any closing remarks, I would like to just point out that the 911.gov website is a great resource, includes a great selection of resources helpful for all members of the 911 community. These resources range from reports and infographics to websites and brochures. Be sure to go to this website and you'll find 6 categories of resources. They're collected from other organizations, colleagues, and leaders in the community. And they are available for anyone to download, share, and use. These resources are added to on a regular basis, and if you have anything that you would like to share with others, be sure and let us know. To get the latest news about the program and about additional resources, upcoming webinars and newsletters, please go to 911.gov and click the sign up button on the right side of the home page. Laurie, any closing remarks?
Well, I'd also like to echo my thanks to Jeff and John and Jim for sharing their experience and their expertise. You guys clearly have put a lot of effort into this, and it shows. So thank you for that. I'd also like to thank the MCP team for all their behind-the-scenes work and pulling the logistics together for the webinar, and thank you all for joining us today.
So that concludes today's webinar. We appreciate everyone's participation. An archived version of the webinar will be available on 911.gov very soon. I'd like to remind you about the next webinar that's scheduled for Tuesday, September 10th at 12 noon Eastern Time. We hope that you will be able to join us, and thank you and have a great day.